What up, my fellow Survivor lovers? Welcome to Survivor Historian, an offshoot of the Challenge Historian podcast. I am your host, Jacob Hollaball. So wonderful to be here with you. It's been a little while, and by a little while, I mean a couple of years, a couple of seasons, since we've had any Survivor content here on this channel in this podcast. But given that we are 1 month into the monumental Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans season, and given that there is no challenge to cover right now or for quite a while into the future, we've decided we're going to come back and do some Survivor coverage for you. Now, it is going to just be me, myself. Last time you heard Survivor coverage on this channel, I had my good buddy Tony with me. He may make some appearances at a later date in this season to get some input there, but for the most part, it will just be me. And once we hit this Wednesday night, it'll be me right after the episode. So while we're a month into the season, 4 episodes into the season, we're going to play a little catch up today. We're getting started a little bit late, but we're still going to get started. We're still going to cover it because this season has been everything we could have hoped for the most part, everything we could have hoped for. Really, really good. So many fun things to talk about. So we're going to get caught up today. First 4 episodes, we're just going to touch on briefly each one. I promise, even though if you've been here, if you listen to challenge coverage, you know I'm a long-winded guy. I can do a lot of talking, even just being me here, but we're not going to do 4 podcasts worth of content here. We're just going to quickly go through the first 4 episodes. Only the biggest storylines, the biggest things worth talking about are the opinions I had, biggest ones, most fun ones to talk about from each episode. And then starting this Wednesday night, very quickly after the episode. It will not be credits roll on the episode. I go live on YouTube. It'll probably be, 15 to 20 minutes afterwards. I'll gather my thoughts, maybe make a note or two, grab a glass of water, that sort of thing, and then we'll get going. So likely call it about 15 minutes post episode every Wednesday night. We will go live on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcast, those will be posted as quickly after. So when you're used to getting them late on Wednesday night, the way you would get a challenge recap, it's going to be just like that. The only difference is that now if you are a YouTube watcher and you want to tune in right away live, comment live, we can do that. And if there's a few of you that do so, we can maybe do a little Q&A, or, I can always take the comments and the questions and things that are flying in there. So that is the plan starting this Wednesday night, and I believe most every week we should be able to do so. If there's any reason that we can't go live quickly after the show, then we will do so Thursday morning instead. But most weeks, and I believe pretty much all the weeks, according to the current calendar, always up to change, can be done right after the episode. So that's that. Before we jump in, the only other thing to kind of say up top, if you are completely brand new to this channel and to me, hello, welcome, wonderful to have you. If you're new, if you've been listening to the channel, but you're new to the Survivor content, you never listened to Survivor before, I could imagine I can't even just imagine. I know, given the amount of people that are watching Survivor 50, there's definitely some folks out there, some reality TV fans that are tuning into Survivor maybe for the first time ever. And so maybe you've listened to my challenge podcast for a while, but this is the first time you've ever heard any Survivor content from me. So a quick little recap and synopsis so you know where I'm coming from my Survivor fandom, and just the viewpoint that I have that will definitely influence my thoughts and sometimes my ability to have thoughts on some of this cast of characters we've got for season 50. So OG Survivor fan, meaning from the true beginning. I was 9 or 10, I think, 10. Yeah, still 10, hadn't had an 11th birthday yet. 10 years old when the very first season of Survivor aired, and I was watching it, and I was watching every episode live through the first probably about 15 seasons worth of the show. Through the first All-Star season, which I forget when that is, or the first or second, through like 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range. I was watching every single episode, absolutely obsessed. And at some point in the teens, I did fall off and kind of, I was still over there watching The Challenge, but that was the only reality show I was watching through, college and into kind of early adult life. And then like a lot of people, pandemic hit. I was looking for some things to do, locked up in my apartment all day. I wanted to watch Winners at War, and so I just decided why not. I dove in knowing nothing about most of the people on that season, and then after watching it and enjoying it, and having had some Survivor folks come into my life via the challenge, I decided let's go back and, binge a bunch of seasons that we didn't watch. I used to love this show. I just got back into it. Let's go. Watched, binged 6-7 different seasons, a bunch of them, based around ones that either I'd heard were really good or were ones that had folks who came over onto the challenge. Like I watched, Millennial Gen X or whatever to get Jay and Michaela. I watched the season Michelle won, things like that. So binged a bunch of them, loved it, and then was like, I'm back in on this show, and starting with season 41. Every season since have watched, religiously, absolutely love it. And again, did cover a couple seasons of it. I don't even remember which 2 seasons Tony and I did at this point. 46 and 7, 45 and 6, one of those 2. We definitely did 46. So somewhere in there. And so new era folks, which, is a large majority of this cast, know them super well, know their seasons well, all that good stuff. A lot of the older faces I have at some point went and watched the seasons because they're from groups and whatnot. Like I've watched David versus Goliath, so I had seen that season, which, we get 3 people from, things of that nature. But for some of the older folks, I don't have, the same level of familiarity with an Ozzy and a Sari and all the seasons they've done the same way that most diehard Survivor fans would have. And so, yeah. Just so you know, as we're going through this, if you're like, hey, how could you not think this person would do this? Because of course they do. They always do that. Or this person and this person's relationship. I don't have as much of that knowledge. I probably shouldn't call this Survivor historian because, the name challenge historian is because I truly do believe I have top flight knowledge on that show and everything about its history and as much as anyone else you can find out there. This show, Survivor, not so much. But still, again, new era. Been watching every single episode, went back and binged a bunch of the ones from the middle portion that I didn't watch live, and grew up originally on those first 10 to 15 seasons or so. Super duper fan from way back when. So that's the background. That's what's coming for you here again Wednesday nights live. Posted them as podcasts immediately afterwards. As for today, we're going to talk 5 things. We're going to talk about the casting in general because we also didn't do any sort of the preseason or anything. So just some quick thoughts on like how they cast it. And now that we've seen some episodes of it, we can kind of view that casting in a new light. And then episode 1, 2, 3, and 4, each one, I got 2 or 3 things just worth calling out, discussing kind of the biggest topics that were coming from those episodes. And we'll go through those as quickly as we can. And then at the very end, now that we do have this data and we've seen how people are interacting and who's got what advantages and who's on what tribes currently, we get to make some predictions that with a little bit more info than the folks who made true preseason predictions made. Although I will say no one can believe me. I don't have any evidence of it, but I did, in my head as I'm starting to watch, make my own preseason predictions. And the person that I think is going to win was one of the people in preseason. And I was like, there was 2 or 3 that I was like, I think it's one of these couple of people that are going to take this home. So that's for the end. That'll be at the predictions. Let's go ahead and dive in, starting with the casting, and then we'll work our way through each and every episode. Casting season 50 was obviously a huge ordeal. Was going to come with there was not going to be anyone that was going to be happy about this. They could have done a bunch of different versions. They could have taken a bunch of maybe not a bunch, a few different approaches to, do we just get the biggest, kind of most famous, iconic names in the game, as many of them as possible? Do we get as many winners again as we can, but then it's very similar to 40 and might have a very similar cast to 40? Do we get like a bunch of finalists that didn't win? Like, do we make a criteria of like, what if we got almost all the second place people or third place people? Do we get all duos? Like everyone has to be paired one in the other. Do we pick one person from, only one per season, no matter what, so that we can represent 24 seasons across this? There was all kinds of different ways they could kind of holistically thought about the casting and how to do it. And I think as we all reacted to the casting news as it came out, and then once the official cast was known and they went out to film, I think I definitely wasn't, and it didn't seem like the general public and fandom was thinking through like that they had to have kind of a strategy here. And it wasn't just like, did you get all everyone's favorites? Did you get the biggest possible names? But it seems we could have seen then, and now that we've seen it actually play out, it makes a lot more sense. And my kind of viewer grade I would give the casting is definitely elevated to not just like I would have given it a passing grade going in, and now I would definitely say like a good grade, like a B plus A minus range. And I am in full agreement with the approach they took, which seems to have been and is now playing out, and we're seeing why, that there was a bunch of little groupings that made sense. Well, it was almost like, no one was allowed to be on the cast that was purely kind of siloed off, like just them. They've got no connection really to anyone else. There's like very few, if any, people on the cast that fit that mold. I would say like Jonathan is maybe one of them. He's the only from his season and doesn't have like an obvious connection to someone else in the game. We have multiple casts, the David versus Goliath trio. We have the three people from 48. All the new seasons or new era players, except for Jonathan, it's all like multiple per season coming in, and a lot of them being ones that make sense as combos. It's things like, we've heard, Q reference Aubrey in the past. And so there's even like a little bit of a link there. We know that Coach and Joe and Colby all have this like honor and integrity thing going on, and that like it's so obvious that they would link up or have a very similar playing style. So even if they don't know each other, never played with each other, there's kind of that linkage there that they, in their mind, when they're casting this, could have these little groups. They know they had to have known, especially given Devins was, a podcast co-host with Jeff and, in the community a bunch. Him and Christian would hit it off and that sort of thing. So I think in the end, that makes a lot of sense to me. If this was, 24 people all from different seasons to just represent as much as we could, and there was very little connections or past history to go off of, then we don't get like episode 1 of the season. Oh, Ozzy and Coach can go back at it. And we instantly, have this history to build off of, and they're right there in the game. They don't have to build anything. And that is the beauty of a returnee season, is you don't have to build up any of these characters or these storylines. You can continue characters and storylines and arcs and things. And so these specific groupings that they seem to be doing lends themselves to being able to do that for those first week on the beach, those first handful of episodes, those first handful of tribal councils, to be able to have all of those connection points and kind of evenly balanced a bunch of groups of 2 or 3 or 4 across the cast makes a whole lot of sense. And, if anything, the only thing I would still have that I would like, now that I'm like fully on board with, like, I get what strategy you were going for, and I actually agree. I think this was the best strategy to go for. The only thing I would say is with the new era casting, I still didn't love the 3 from 48, which I like that Kyle gets the chance and got the chance and then succeeded in the chance to show how great of a player he truly is. But that season just didn't really do it for me personally. And so having 3 from there, I would have maybe replaced that and added still 3 other new era people. Maybe, I like 47 more than most, maybe. So maybe putting another 1 or 2 with Genevieve from there, whether it's Rachel, Sam, Andy, Sierra, Saul, Teeny. There's a lot of options I would go with there. But like if Rachel or Sam or Andy, any of those 3 were up to do it, I would have probably had one of them instead of, maybe a Kelly or Caleb from 45 to go with Dee and Emily, a Cassidy, if, we wanted to get another new era represented in there. Now, maybe she was getting you went on the challenge, so you don't get to come back, but like Dee went on the challenge and the flagship one, not even the, at the time still CBS or MTV one, where Cassie at least was on at the time CBS one. So I would have maybe changed a little bit of those, but overall, I went from being like the casting, was good, passing grade, solid, to understanding it much more now that we've seen it play out and thinking they had the right strategy all along and giving it a much higher grade than I would have before. Now, for episode number 1. Again, we can't, I'm not going to do 4 podcasts inside of one here. So these will be quick. We're not going to touch on anywhere near everything. We're going to barely touch on anything from any of these episodes. Just a couple big highlight things to slowly but surely get us all the way caught back up. First and foremost, I would never go on a journey of any kind ever, especially on a returnee season. Maybe on a new season, a brand, with all new players. If it was, there would be times in the game would dictate that maybe, like if I'm totally on the bottom, then that's a different story. But especially the day 1, day 2 journeys, and I think especially in a returnee season, unless you are truly like on the bottom, like I am getting voted out tonight, so like screw it. What the worst that can happen is I like am in a worse, there isn't a worse position to be in, so at least I could maybe possibly get something that could help me or cause some confusion and some chaos at minimum. Otherwise, I'm not going. It just doesn't end well. In this episode and in this season so far, it's basically not ended well for anyone that has gone on any of the journeys. But like from the opening one on, everyone, even people that have gotten things from the journeys, it has been bad for them. There was 2 in the opening episode. And yes, Ozzy sort of, he gains air quotes from this one, but he's also absolutely exhausted or he gains a little bit from the after the first one. He loses, but then like him and Q get to split the stuff after the fact, or after they do the exile, which we are going to talk about in a minute. But like, even if he sort of maybe gains a little bit, even if Coach, gains, quote unquote, Ozzy definitely doesn't actually, because he's completely exhausted. And then Coach, yes, he gets to come back briefly a hero, but then immediately him and Ozzy, go at it the next couple times via Matt Talk. And we find out like Coach lied, now Coach is not telling the full truth to his team. And he's reignited this rivalry, and he's got an enemy on the island again. So like he didn't win in that scenario. Either Savannah goes on one later and, wins, quote unquote, gets the thing, but doesn't, because her tribe immediately knows like she can't be telling us the truth. She's got to have something that eventually costs her in the second episode. So just the opening ones, you're going to be asked to put in a lot of physical effort, and that on its own is going to be a huge detriment. And then even if you get something in the early game, when you haven't solidified who's on top, who's on the bottom, what are the alliances, everyone's just looking for the smallest, simplest reason to target someone. And now you're the one that could be assumed to have something, even if you literally had something taken from you, and your tribe is still going to be like, well, we're going to not believe him. And actually, he didn't actually lose a vote. He's gained a vote. So don't go on the journeys. Don't go on the journeys, period. At least the early game ones, unless you are in the worst spot, mid game, late game, sure. But otherwise, do not go. And speaking of, I referenced it before, but quick reference so that no one forgets. This is one of the few things that I'm glad doing this 4 weeks in. I can remind you. You may have forgotten already. Ozzy and Q were told to stay overnight out there, and they called it Exile Island. There's no chance that that is the only time we see a version of Exile Island. Now, will it just be the same thing 1 or 2 more times? We're like, go on a journey, or you just got to spend one night away. It's not because you've been semi-eliminated or, cast aside or anything. It's just kind of luck of the draw. It just turns up and it happens. Sure, possibly. But that's not the last time. I would not think they would bring that up just to like be able to say Exile Island once on the first episode really quick and, ultimately it not be that much different. It's the first night that those 2 are sleeping on that beach without shelter or anything than the other beach where they haven't, built up their shelters and things yet. So just pointing that out, that I bet that's going to be back at some point in some way. The first challenge and tribal council. The thing I was noting throughout the first challenge was just simply, is there anyone who's kind of through the opening marooning challenge and the first immunity challenge, is there anyone excelling way more than we would think, or really helping their team in an outstanding way? And is there anyone being a real detriment to their team, or really performing below what we might expect? And the only single one that fit either of those criteria was Sari. We find out after the fact. This is the season of all seasons to be paying attention to the interviews after the fact, all the different podcasts that come out with good information being had from Survivor folks themselves after the fact. We've learned a lot in the first few episodes, and specifically this very first episode, we learned so much that wasn't shown to us afterwards that is vital information, one of which was Cirie is horrible at throwing the ball, and it was like, hey, like, you know, why was she even doing that? They all got to split up, and there was a couple different positions where 2 or 3 people could work together, and like we could, if we were nervous at all. And we found out afterwards, Cirie was like, hey, I practiced this. I like demanded in her team, like, I'm doing that one. I know I can do it. I won't let you down, etc. Which then makes that, you know, even worse for her dynamic with their team, that's how that went. But it ultimately, you know, doesn't affect her as far as getting voted out of the game. Jenna goes home first, and I didn't have a lot of, you know, the conversation about how it went down. The biggest thing was, again, something Jenna said afterwards that we don't see in the episode. It feels like Cirie, the master player in the episode, and she definitely still gets credit. This isn't to take all the credit away from her, but Jenna says, you know, hey, like Christian really was the one actually that like had the conversations with Cirie and Ozzy and put the things in motion that then it, you know, it felt like a Cirie thing or an Ozzy thing, but it was a Christian thing really above all else, which is a theme throughout the episodes. We'll talk a lot about him in the next couple of episodes. But Jenna going home first, she was probably the other one, although she, you know, had the connection of playing on, you know, the All-Star season with some of the other Colby and some of the others. But ultimately for the show, and if you're newer to this, this is something I talk about every single episode, every single season of the challenge. So if you're not someone who listens to challenge content, you're just popping in now for some Survivor, get used to me discussing this. It can sometimes be, you know, a little mean to the contestants themselves, but when someone goes home, when they're, you know, eliminated from the show, I certainly have my rooting interest, and I certainly have opinions about good gameplay, bad gameplay, etc. But I also always have an opinion of, is this good or bad for the show, aka the television product and the entertainment value of the show and the best possible stories and narratives that can come. And I think this was one of the almost best case scenarios for the first person to go home, not because Jenna isn't an amazing story, an amazing player, and we definitely needed that representation. Like, it's so cool that we could have that representation from the first season. But ultimately, with the options available, I think this one was, you know, every single person on this is here for a reason. Every single person going home is someone who could be an amazing cast member and character, has been and is an amazing cast member and character. But you know, there is still levels, and I think that one wasn't going to hurt the season too much. And if someone had to go first, I think I was okay with it being Jenna. But then that episode wasn't over because someone else goes home, and that person was Kyle. And for the third and final time, we'll reference things we learned after the show that wasn't shown to us in the edit, which is Kyle gets hurt trying to run up the wall after climbing through the mud and doing all the different things on the little obstacle course, and he pops his Achilles, which is absolutely awful. I don't know if they did in the edit a good enough job of like how big, like that's the worst injury in sports, pretty much. Like across all the different sports, like it's been a huge rash of them in the NBA, and it's this huge thing right now. Like it is as devastating gets, as across all injuries. Any injury of any kind is horrible, obviously. But I don't think they did a big enough deal of like, holy shit, like this is crazy, and the fact that he was trying to stay out there is crazy, and a testament to him and his competitiveness and drive and everything else. But the thing they didn't show us, if you hadn't heard, is that he had actually gotten up the wall, and it was Colby who was left down by himself, who couldn't get up the wall and got tired enough that Kyle went back down, helped Colby up, and then had to get back up himself, and that's when the injury happened. And so, you know, there is a little more to that story of like, damn, if Colby could have got up, or if, you know, maybe Kyle wouldn't have went up the first time, expended the energy, they would have just taken a different approach. Maybe he doesn't get hurt, getting up on his own afterwards. Who knows? Things could have just been a little bit different. But he gets hurt, and that's absolutely horrible. And he gets medically evac from the game, which is, I mean, they obviously have to once you realize it's an Achilles injury. And it's a huge, huge bummer because as we saw, and then we've definitely heard about after his exit, he was the mayor of his tribe. He was in total and complete control. Every single person there wanted to work with him. And he really, in a short period of time, validated how good he is at the social aspect of this game, how good he just is with people and winning people over and being on the right side with every single person, and how quickly he can just make you feel good and make you want to work with him. And was really proving that he is, in that discussion of the winners from the new era. There's a lot of kind of back and forth of like who's the best one in the new era. Especially, it became even more this game of the biggest threats get voted out 8th, 7th, 6th, like over and over and over. And so it kind of always felt like the winners sometimes weren't even the best players necessarily. They were good players, but they, just the way the game worked, everyone knew the game too well to let the possibly like best players get all the way to the end. He was definitely in that conversation and definitely proved his social dominance in that short period of time. It was a bummer to lose him. It was a bit of a bummer to end this big, grand, amazing first episode on, but that is where things left off. Moving into episode 2, Christian shit his pants. That's one of the only things that we have to talk about from this episode. A hilarious moment. Christian definitely dominates the first 4 episodes, like edit-wise, screen time-wise, everything else, which makes sense. He has been, on the losing tribe here for most of it, which, is just how it happens. There's a reason. When it's not quite the disaster tribe, it's kind of Ozzy, just being the one on, the bad end of all of these things. But when the same tribe goes to tribal council the first couple of times, and after the first few episodes, there was some complaints out there of like, we're getting a lot of Christian and Devons and we're getting almost none of some other people. It's like, well, this happens. They're doing stuff worth putting on camera and telling us about. And also their tribe is going to tribal council each time. So we kind of spend the most time with that tribe, and they're the ones doing the most on that tribe, and doing the most in every single aspect on that tribe. So we see a bunch of them, but in this moment, I'm glad they showed us it, not only because it's just like a funny moment, like let's be honest, but it is, we don't like really see anymore in the new era. And now a new era returnee season, we definitely are going to see almost none of the actual hardship part of the experience of Survivor, and the actual, like, they are out there 24 hours a day, they're out the whole time. And we see very limited snippets of it. And there is a lot of time between those snippets that they're just existing and living on the island together, and things, like having to go to the bathroom and all kinds of different things. We just don't see much of that. We don't really see them talk about not eating, all that kind of stuff. And so, while in a very funny comedic way, getting to see like, that you don't feel good. You feel really horrible. And you, in fact, even though you aren't eating anything at all, it's like sometimes that leads to like you getting a little sick or just having a crazy bowel movement out of nowhere because your body is in shambles. And then all of a sudden you realize you've shit your pants and you got to waddle yourself down to the ocean and clean yourself off, and ask production very kindly if there's any possible chance that you could get a second pair of underwear. And so, that was a hilarious moment. And I like seeing a few moments here and then to remind us of like, oh yeah, they are living out here. And there's a lot of time that we don't see because it's just not the necessarily game time. It's just the hang out and get through. And there's a challenge tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it's 4 p.m. today, and we don't have a tribal or anything. So we're just going to kind of hang out here and exist for the next 18 hours. Then we got boomerang idols. We got a bunch of them. Genevieve found one in the first episode. Christian finds one in this second episode. Eventually, Genevieve will find another one in the third episode, I believe. So we're just going to talk about boomerang idols here because it's the best. It just fits in nicely. The Billie Eilish boomerang idol. And Genevieve finds one in episode 1, sends it to Ozzy. Christian finds one here, sends it to Aubrey. Eventually, Genevieve finds one and sends to Rizzo. We'll discuss that later probably. But Billie Eilish has not acknowledged. I haven't checked in the last couple of days. I don't think anything's changed. No acknowledgement of her about about Survivor. No social posts, no just like premiere night, no, I don't think ever like shared the trailer in the lead up to the premiere of like, hey, you might hear a familiar name in this season or anything like that, which seems crazy because they named the one idol of the season that is going to be reoccurring over and over because they put it on all three beaches the whole time pre-merge. There's always this kind of one pre-merge idol that has of a specific type or requires a specific thing, like the Beware advantage led to him before, things like that. In this one, they named Billie Eilish, and how did they do this without some contractual agreement over you got to make an appearance on the show, or you got to do a couple posts about it, or you got to do, I don't know, something, anything. And yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion around all the celebrity. We'll talk about the Zach Brown when we get to episode 4, but all like the celebrity influences on this season and like mostly negative discussion the moment we learned about that. And so far, something like we named this idol and we're clearly making all of them say Billie Eilish over and over and over in the confessionals, yet she has no connection to the show and is literally not discussing the show in any single way. So it's like the worst case scenario for making it easier for us to be like, what the hell was all this celebrity stuff? What's the point of any of this? So that's ridiculous. As far as who they should send these to, though, the actual idol itself, the idea of a boomerang idol, you have to send it to someone on a different tribe. They don't know that you sent it to them. And if they go home with it in their pocket, it gets sent back. And that idol can only be used by the person holding it. They can't use it for a friend or anything like that or pass it around. I think it's a very interesting twist on an idol. It's fascinating that like you can once, especially as they all kind of come to know most of the people by the point, like the first two that are found are kind of like knowledge about them is shared with most of the tribes. So most of the people on the beach like now know like the idol this season is this boomerang thing. And so that means you can go look for an idol, but right now the only ones we know of are ones where you find and send to someone else. So it kind of makes you like, do you really even want to look that hard for one? Because you can't find it for you. You're hoping maybe your friends might notice if they're on another tribe, you're in a bad spot. Hey, go look for an idol, see if you can find one. If that way you can send it to me, help me out. It's just a completely different dynamic. I'm very interested in it. The idea of trying to then decide who to give it to. Is there a shot that this person would be dumb enough to go home with it in their pocket? And I shouldn't say dumb enough. It can happen to very smart players, certainly. But like, is there any chance I'm going to get this back? Should I even try to factor that in, or should I just strategically think, who do I want to have an idol? And in my mind, I think the only move would be, I'm sending this to someone that I don't think can win this game. I'm sending this to someone who I don't think is a threat. If I can send it to someone who's not a threat and that I think I could maybe work with or like manipulate in the future in a possible tribe swap or merge, sweet, let's go for that. But I just want someone who I don't feel like is that big of a threat, that big of a player to have it for a couple reasons. One, they're on another tribe. I'm hoping they're not someone that's viewed, I don't think that the odds of it coming back to me are very good. So I'm kind of ignoring that that's even possible. And I want it to be someone who's still going to be there with their idol when we get to a merge or a tribe swap, so that then I can be on that tribe with someone who has an idol that I know of. I can use that to my advantage, whether I, play that info as a kind of something I, don't reveal until I need to, or it's just an easy way for me to align with that person to let them know I was the one who sent you that. No one else knows. Have you told anyone about it? Great. Now we're the only two people. Great. That's wonderful. And now I've got someone who I feel like I'm a little better at strategically, and I can maybe manipulate and use to my advantage. That's what I want to go with. That's who I want to send it to. And the second thing I want to do, because it does come up with Genevieve, again, in a later episode, but she finds another one and gets to send another one. The folks over at Pod Has Spoken, Tyson and Riley and everyone else over there, they brought up something very fun when Genevieve found the second one. Is they discussed, is she allowed to send it to the same person or not? Is it probably pretty likely that while we didn't hear it or see it, that it might say in the rules, if you've found a second one, you can't send it to the same person. Because if it doesn't say that, I'm sending it to the same person. I'm giving the same person multiple idols. And again, I'm doing that if I gave the first one to someone who I don't think can win the game. You don't want to give the biggest threat in the game two idols and be like, here you go. The first time you feel threatened, you can pass through the next two tribal councils you go to. You don't want that. But it would be much more interesting, I think, one, like the chance that person, is just carrying a lot. Again, huge asset if you eventually are working with them. And if not, the slim chance they could get voted out with one is the same slim chance they could get voted out with both, and then they would both come back to you. That'd be pretty crazy. I don't. It just sounds fun and diabolical, and mostly just interesting as a viewer. But I thought that was a great idea from them. So Boomerang Idols, love them. Hate the SponCon portion of it because until we get acknowledgement that she has actually sponsored it. Devins and Joe, and to some degree Savannah, but really it's like a Devins Joe thing goes down this episode, which leads to the hilarious moment between Christian and Joe rocking him in the hammock, looking at him up through the underside. The footage of that, the way they edited that is just hilarious and beautiful. It didn't feel like it needed to happen. Devins really kind of painted himself into a corner a little bit by first getting kind of caught in a conversation where they're talking about an alliance that he's like, oh, this is like good that you guys are thinking this, but like, I already kind of have a firm alliance over here. And then, gets caught doing the little whisper to Savannah. And I felt like there was an easy out during his conversation with Joe. And he just kind of didn't want to take it because he didn't want to be like fake aligned with Joe, but it was the worst person to be, not want to just like fake something with. I don't know. It all led to very fun and interesting things. I hate that it led to Savannah ultimately getting the like raw end of all of the altercation that went down there, but very, very funny stuff from them. And it was the first of, we eventually in the tribe swap get most of the honor and integrity crew together on one tribe, but they go to tribal council. Savannah ultimately does go home. And I would say her and Rizzo both never really had a shot this season early on, because obviously Rizzo is still there, and we'll talk about him later, but I think he's kind of doing a little bit under the radar well so far. I think he might have a shot. But I feel like coming in with the physical toll of the very short time, like a couple weeks or whatever between their season and filming this one, is much different than all the other players. Yes, they got a couple weeks of recovery and everything, but they're traveling, they're doing media, they're doing all this stuff, and then they're right back out there playing the game again, starving again. That is already a little, a difficult disadvantage coming in. And then the big, though, that everyone else hadn't watched their season. They didn't know who they were. And now, they come in and they at least, they both say right away, they're both very honest. She says she won. He says, he made it to fire and got, ended up voting for Savannah for Savannah, not Sophie. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, so they're honest about it, but especially for Savannah, a winner who they didn't get to see play. There's just no way any single person on that beach has any interest in aligning with you and letting you stick around. You're just an immediate, like, you're the only one. We don't know about the personality. We don't know who you are. We don't have whether we're wrong about all these other people and everyone's changing their games and stuff. Sure, we at least can come in with some shred of like, I've watched Christian play. I kind of know a bit about his personality. I have an idea whether I think I'm going to like him or be able to work with him, etc. No one's got that with them. She won. They don't know how it happened. They don't know if they can believe her stories or, were you loyal? Were you not? Did you do this? Were you good at challenges, etc.? So it was stacked against her. And for either her or Rizzo, I thought going in, if they have to avoid the first 2 to 3 tribal councils, if they can avoid the first 2 to 3, then they can get past the point of like, hey, we're 8, 9, 10 days into this. Now the people, you've spent enough time, your interactions on the island for those days kind of supersedes whatever you came into the show thinking about people. And so then maybe they could kind of like wash away that disadvantage of being the unknown. But they had to get past those first 2, 3 tribal councils. And Rizzo was able to avoid going to any of them. Savannah, obviously, on the tribe that goes to the first 2 and, barely survives the first one in reality. And then the second one gets wiped out. She's, I never talked about 49. I liked the season a lot more than most. I also think she, in particular, as well as Rizzo, are much better players than I think they were getting credit for, even if the cast, it wasn't the strongest group of Survivor players. Certainly, I'm not like trying to tell you that I thought the opposite of what the general consensus was, but I did think much higher. And I think she's a damn good Survivor player and a damn good winner. And I think if she would have been like, if that season would have been 46 or 47, I think things would have fared very differently for her here on 50. Then on to episode 3, the end of episode 2 and episode 3. We'll kind of start with a couple things from this episode, starting with the end of episode 2 and the beginning of episode 3, which is the biggest air quotes I've ever done heist in this scenario. And I'm only saying that because that's what Devins and Christian keep calling it, which it was in fact the opposite of a heist. They did not steal anything. They planted something. They decided to take the wrapping that was around the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol and create a fake scroll and hide it at tribal council for use at a later time, just to kind of stir some things up, because obviously there's nothing in it. There's not even, I don't think, maybe Devins made a fake idol to put it in. I don't even know if you went that far. I think honestly the entire idea here is that they could just pull out the parchment and like go look at it close to their body, like near them, and be like, oh my goodness, and like just make people think they like just found something crazy, and I'm not willing to say what it is or whatever. But one, I loved it that they did it. It's fun. It's a fun idea. It's not going to pay off. Even if it was an actual idol, somehow like Jeff would be like, you can't do that. I'm interested to find out if the next time Devins is at a tribal council, it opens with Jeff walking over and handing it to him and saying, you left this last time and we don't allow you guys to leave anything here, or if they're going to let him actually pull it out and, complete his move with it, if you will. We will see. I really do lean towards Jeff's going to be like, hey, you left this and, you don't get to hide things at tribal council. That's not within the rules. So that he doesn't set the precedent that you can like leave your things at tribal council or hide things at tribal council or anything like that. But yeah, opposite of a heist, not a heist. Please don't call it a heist. Heists are very near and dear to my heart, heist movies, etc. So use the word properly. But Christian's fall in distraction, top level, expert stuff. I laughed. I liked every single bit of it. And I'm going to enjoy whenever we get to see the payoff, which I do believe will be the next time Devins goes to a tribal council. And it's fun they did it no matter what. So that's that. Then my guy Rizzo and my guy Charlie, and one of the biggest stories coming out of this particular episode was Charlie, deservingly so, is not over the fact that he likely lost $1 million over his number one not voting for him out of spite, and he's not over that, nor should he be. And he and Rizzo at first seem like they maybe can get along, and Rizzo might like Charlie and want to work with him. But then Rizzo shares what went down on his season. Charlie asked, "Did you have a number one?" And Rizzo I know he unknowingly botches this, but he also should know that he's botching this a little bit, especially he's the one that asked Charlie right before, like, have you talked to Maria, which was hilarious that he just asked that. Like, dude, not a great gameplay moment from my guy Rizzo to add, like, what you're just going to purposely like needle Charlie here. Like, what? He doesn't want to talk about this. What are you doing? But love that he did it. It's great content, certainly. But you obviously, super fan, very aware of that went down, that Charlie would maybe not love, someone not voting for their top person, but mostly just like Rizzo says it in this instance, like, yeah, I had a number one. Her name was Sophie. She made the final 3. I didn't. I got out of fire. So you voted for Sophie? You didn't vote for Savannah? No, I voted for Savannah. And maybe it was discussed more than what we saw. I sure hope so. But how bad of an explanation that is, and how deserving then Charlie hearing that be like, wait, you're best. You had a number one. You answered the question. You had a number one. You said you were best friends. She made the final. You didn't. You didn't vote for her at the final. What gives? You don't explain the much easier and the true, honest, we had a trio. I worked with Savannah most closely the whole season, and Sophie was a third member of our trio who at times kind of flirted with the idea of ditching the trio because it was kind of me and Savannah, and Sophie was the third on the totem pole there. And so when we all, two of the three of us made the final and Savannah had played the best game by far, I, had to pick between the two of them, and Savannah played the better game. Like, just explain what actually happened in the true way, and there's no problem. And Charlie can't be upset. He's like, oh, okay, like a trio situation. Like, got it, understood. One of you is better than that. And, and if anything, that also makes you like, oh, so you guys, a trio ran the game, and you were the one of the trio that didn't make the final, though. Like, okay, maybe a little less threatening than we would otherwise think. So I hate it mainly because I'm such a huge Charlie lover. I'm a big fan. I think Charlie's an expert player of this game. Again, I think Rizzo is a little bit better than he got credit for, and I did a full 180. I started off 49 hating Rizzo. I absolutely adored him by the end, and I was thrilled that he was coming back on season 50. We could save that for another day. But now the two guys that I like maybe the most on the whole cast and are, feuding, and we learn through then episode 4. It comes back up again. Charlie ain't letting this rest. This is his mortal enemy on Earth now, let alone in Survivor. And so I'm a little nervous for my two guys going at it. And then we hit the swap in episode 3, and it hurts some people. It helps a couple people. It definitely hurts Q and Colby, I think, the most out of everyone. Obviously, eventually Q goes home. We'll talk momentarily about that. But I think just because Q and Colby, the two without votes, which I do got to remind myself, I believe, so Colby, I still does not currently have a vote because he hasn't gone to a tribal council to suffer the penalty of like one tribal without a vote yet. But those two don't, but they've at least kind of figured out a position in their initial tribe where like, okay, well, we got like a group of 5 here. So yeah, 2 of us have lost our votes. That's awful. But we're going to be able to still find a way to get by here because not everyone knows that fact. We got 5 of us, so we can convince the other 3, one of them to flip and get a 4-2 vote. Everything could be okay. And then they get put on different tribes, and now not having your vote is not a death sentence, but is going to work against you super duper bad. And Q eventually does go home in this episode, which is a massive loss. Back to what I was saying in episode 1, who going home for the show is going to have the biggest impact on the entertainment level and the viability of every episode the whole way through being just absolutely amazing and great and top notch. Q going home this quickly is not what you want for season 50 or for any season Q is on. He is so damn interesting, so damn entertaining, so much fun, such just the biggest variable possible to throw into the Survivor soup. And he only canceled Christmas once. I mean, come on now. Like, we had at least 4 or 5 more cancelings in us this season. And so that was a big bummer. And he at least went out about it in proper Q fashion. He did tell Mike to vote for him. Always wanted to tell people to vote for you. It's great. And ultimately, though, same as the first 2 episodes, went the 3rd episode. Christian really was pulling the strings on the votes. And that, that only just continues to continue throughout the one that follows. Opening episode 4, then, we get a talent show. And quick note on the talent show, Charlie's wrestling ability really surprised me, and he and Jonathan got robbed. I'm sorry. Unless there was way more impressions that Rizzo was doing other than the Mickey Mouse one where he did the Mario line but said Mickey Mouse at the end. Jonathan and Charlie put on a hell of a performance. How did they not win that? I digress. Genevieve and Aubrey. Happens in the first episode, either the first or second, I think it's the first one. They have their little like simmering standoff of like, I don't think I can trust you. I don't think I can trust you either. And just kind of staring at each other, realizing, I guess we're going to not trust each other and we're going to not like each other here at all, which was fantastic. But when that happens, and then every confessional for the next episode or 2, they're asked about it. That's one of those scenarios where you do have to remember you're watching this highly edited thing. And yeah, there's probably going to be some payoff to it, but also like they kind of got to latch on to something with everyone. And so each person, it's like, okay, well, you had this little thing that went over here. It might not actually in reality be all that big of a thing, but we don't have anything else to ask you about. So we're going to ask you about it, and we're going to make you say something about it, and then we're going to ask you about it again the next day. And then we've asked you about it so many times, we've convinced you that it is a thing, and now you're going to want to talk about it or actually do something, and suddenly it is a thing. That can happen. the editing can kind of make things seem bigger, or mostly just bigger than they actually are, when someone might come off a show and be like, I know it looks like I was targeting this person the whole time. I actually kind of wasn't. They just kept asking. We had that one conversation, and then they just kept asking me in confessionals about them. Like, I wanted this person to go home the whole time, and I was having conversations with about this person going home the whole time. That sort of thing. So after the first Genevieve Aubrey thing, we're like, okay, they're on opposite sides. I don't know that this is necessarily going to have some big payoff. But then in this episode 4, Genevieve realizing Aubrey's gone, and it's one thing to go like, I'm going to go walk to the water well, aka I'm going to go see if they're looking for an idol, but like do it a little more casually or whatever. That's one thing. It's known to like, hey, we all knew you were out looking, but also like I came looking for you, and that looks its own way. But to just walk out and start calling Aubrey's name, the just like full blown like, we know you're looking and you better stop looking for idols right now. I'm just going to come yelling your name looking for you. That is some over the top stuff. That is, and I think, a pretty bad game move from Genevieve, someone who I think is like a really, really smart player and really well thought out with the things she does and every little action and conversation she has. Doing that, like, one, any salvage there could have maybe been with Aubrey is gone. And then the rest of the tribe is also like, is Genevieve really that concerned of like, geez, like, okay, like, because like they could hear her yelling out her name and stuff too. And unless all of them as a group were like, someone should go find Aubrey. Like, let's not let her look by herself. And was like, Genevieve, go do it. And then maybe they could laugh like, oh, okay, like, we told you to go look for her. You didn't have to like yell her name. It's probably not a good look for Genevieve towards the entire cast, let alone just Aubrey. So I think that was a really big misstep from her. But ultimately, she does find Aubrey, and then she finds the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol again, her second one. And, I do think sending it again back to, I said before, send it to the same person, I think would be the most interesting just from like a fan standpoint. I bet you're probably not allowed to do that. But and probably, if we really gamed it out, maybe isn't a good strategic play in any sort of situation. It just is an interesting thing to think about from a viewership standpoint. But she sends this one to Rizzo, and this time she is, at least I think, smart enough to not tell a single person. The first time around, she told people she found it with someone, and then, ended up telling their whole little group, and that's fine, was the right thing to do. This one, she finds it completely by herself, no one around, and I think does the absolute right thing of like, I'm not even going to tell anyone that I found this. I'm going to that way, when Rizzo gets it, if he doesn't want to tell a single person that he has it, fantastic, even better. And I think sending it to someone who, again, she doesn't know anything, but does know, I would have to assumes like all of us did, of like, well, the 49 people are targets because we don't know who they are. So she's sending it to someone who she maybe views as like going to get targeted quickly. And yeah, and is someone who she wouldn't have a connection with. So she could build that extra connection if they do end up on a tribe together. So I think it was a decent pick. I really still haven't come around to like, what is the best case strategy of who to send this to? If you have an ally, if you have an enemy, if you have someone that is like a Rizzo to Genevieve of like, we have no connection and maybe now we can have one. I don't know, but it's the first time around with these. I'm sure we'll learn based off how it goes. And if we ever see them again in the future, have a little better idea of strategically what the best use case is for them. They go to a challenge, and Zach Brown is here. There's a big old reveal. It's time for Zach Brown to come on out, and he has designed a reward, and he's going to do some fishing and cook it for him and play some music, and it's a whole big thing. And some of the people there are absolutely floored and can't believe it, and some of the people there have no idea who this is and think this is ridiculous and lame, and you can tell by whose faces is making what face who those people are, which camp they fall into. Now, I will just say, as a major, big country music fan, for those that aren't country music fans, I don't know that they read some of his accolades and things, but like, it's hard for them to just come out and say, this is an A+ lister in the music world. But like, if you're not a country music person, like Zach Brown is an A+ list musician. Maybe not on a mainstream level. If you want to say, hey, A+ is like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, and that's it. Like, okay, sure. Then A list, whatever, like regular A+, not in the stratosphere of mainstream culture, but in the country music world, like A+ lister for a long, long time, headline stadiums, arenas for a long, long, long time. all the accolades, all the everything. And so it is very cool that they like got a really, really big name is doing this. You know, if this is going to happen, at least it is like an actual legitimate huge name. Put all that to the side. Love him, love his music, fun. Doing this feels a little weird. I am definitely in the side of like, I don't know. I don't really know if we need this in any way, if it's that cool or that interesting from the viewer side of things. But ultimately, just make it shorter and we're good. And it is cool because it is like a cool reward. The idea that like we're gonna do this reward. We got this big time musician who is also an outdoorsman, and he's gonna like cook up this. He's gonna maybe go fishing. We've learned since maybe didn't do all the fishing, etc. types of things. Maybe there was some chicanery going on there, but is gonna like slice up this fish and grill for you and make you this huge cool meal, and then you're gonna get to listen to him play guitar, and that's gonna be a really cool, memorable thing. All for it. Make it shorter. It was so long, and they could have cut all of it in half very easily, and then everything just works good, and it's a cool reward, and we keep it moving, and I think it works a lot better. And I also think, and it was pointed out by many afterwards, I don't know if he would have wanted to do it or not. Maybe he could have asked, but like, if you're gonna have a music person come, like Chase Rice is just sitting there. He isn't Zach Brown, A+ list, country music artist, but he was a very successful country music artist, and he's a very successful country music artist because he went on Survivor and won and used the money to then, fund him going into music and not making any money off music for a while because he had won all this money. And then he became very successful and a big, big deal in country music for a little bit there. And so that could have been interesting and could have been a way to be like, what if we took a few notable alumni who went on, like Mike White's already here competing, but like, what if we brought back a few different people who went on to big, big things after the show and had them involved in some little way to kind of highlight, like, look what the platform of Survivor has also produced. So could have went that way, or they could have just cut the Zach Brown stuff in like half and it would have been great and we could have kept it moving. But so far, the celebrity interactions, I think, are not being received super well from the fans. And this one I was very mixed bag on. Then we get to the vote of this episode, and Christian, steers the vote again. I really do think he's 4 for 4. If they did a final tribal council right now, they'd have to just vote like Christian. He would be able to get up there and be like, this is how I chose who went home, all the, the first 4 votes. And he'd be wipe the floor. Everyone else would be like, well, we haven't gone to tribal council because we didn't lose every single time. And be like, that's fair. But, whatever it is. No one listens to Mike's logic, but Mike's logic here is right. Even if he's doing it, he's just using it to cling to because he wants to keep his friend Angelina. But he is right, and it would be at his own detriment eventually. He uses to try to keep Angelina, says like she can't win. And he actually says she can't win, so why not keep her around? You want people around like that. And I think that is a really good strategy for any season, and definitely for a returnee season, because I do think the list of people who cannot win is longer than you might think. Maybe my list, I'm a little too aggressive with it, but when I view this cast, and even if I would try to remove the knowledge of like getting to watch it, if I was like actually there as one of them in the moment, there's people who I just kind of look at like, I just don't, after the first couple of days, like how they're playing the game aggressively or not, etc., the story they could possibly weave, the narrative they could build. Like, I just think there's a bunch of people here who don't actually, I just don't see any way they could actually win this season, this particular season. And I would just be going, my whole game plan would be like, I want to sit next to those people at the end. And so I want to work with those people. I want to save those people. I want to use that new school mentality of like, we get threats out. Who's the biggest threat in the game? They're the next one to go. Who's the next biggest threat? They're the next one to go. We got to do this without being the one who's taking out all the threats, because then we move up to be we're the threat and we're the one taken out. And you got to play that game. But I would play that game. And right now, I think Mike, who's now gone, I did not think there was any way Mike could win this game. I don't think there's any way he could sit at final tribal council, and with the life he leads and success he has, and that anyone would vote for him. I think they would, no matter who the other people were, one of them would be able to garner the votes over him. I don't think Aubrey can win. I don't think Devins can win. I don't think Chrissy can win. I don't think Joe can win. I don't think Angelina can win. I don't think Stephanie can win. And I don't think Jonathan can win. That's 7 people. 1, 2, 3, 7 plus Mike, who's now gone. So there was 8 at the moment. And now 7 still remaining in the game that I don't think they can win. And I might be wrong, and I think it for different reasons for each of them, but I don't see a scenario where Aubrey, Devins, Chrissy, Joe, Angelina, Stephanie, and Jonathan. Aubrey's the one maybe I'm not giving enough credence to there. We'll see. But I just don't see a scenario where they're running enough of the game, doing enough of the moves, winning enough things mixed in, kind of just like lead, where they could be sitting there at the end and that one of the other 2 people sitting next to them wouldn't have just kind of a better story narrative and a better gameplay on this particular season to overcome them. And I'm probably wrong. And now one of these 7 people that you can almost bank on, one of those 7 people is now going to win. But that's how I'd feel. And I would be definitely going on the way, even though Mike is doing it because it's his friend, going on those lines of like, this person seems like a threat and this person doesn't. So I'm going to vote for the one that seems like a threat, and the one that doesn't at all, I want to keep around, especially if they're working with me. And so I think it's very interesting that they went that route. Mike's gone. I thought he was going to either be like the first one gone or make it very, very far in the game is just like fun to have around, and we'll get rid of him at the near the end, and everyone will be totally chill with that. He's gone. Good showing from him. It was a great time having him around. And it is still just wild to think at the end of all of this that Ozzy has yet to win a single thing on this season. He has lost every single challenge. He's been on a journey and lost. He's found ways to lose repeatedly this entire season long. And it is a very compelling story that's kind of building up, because it's not only that he's at those tribals. Again, Christian has also been at all of them, but Christian's been on the right side of all the votes and steering all those votes, and Ozzy has been on the wrong side, not just not steering, on the wrong side of multiple of them. And so fascinating thing to think about as we head into episode 5 and beyond. Let's end then with some predictions. We'll talk next out. We'll talk a winner and one other thing in between. Next out, I think if Ozzy can wisen up, it'll be Christian in like an Ozzy, Steph, Angelina vote. Those 3, I should start this off. Vatu's going to lose again. I don't think they're going to change tribes again that quickly, and I think Vatu is going to, for sure, lose again, and they will be back at tribal again. And I think if Ozzy can kind of figure out, like, Christian's been doing all this, I'm very upset at this point. He knows he's been on the outs of all these votes. I think he, Steph, and Angelina can come together, and it's very obvious, and they can vote out either Christian or Emily, but would maybe go Christian. But I think it ends up being Steph. I think Christian, Emily are able to bring Angelina back in and vote Steph out. And Ozzy will yet again be on the outside. Maybe he'll be like, fine, can I just be in on the vote this time? Maybe he'll be in on it. But I think Steph's going to go home next. And then before I predict a winner, I will just say there's been a bunch of talk of like how many episodes are left, how many players are left, etc. It's not as crazy as it kind of is being made on social media, at least to seem. There's 19 players left, and there's 9 episodes left. So we need to get 13 players out in the next 8 episodes to leave us with 5 for the finale. I could see the finale of this season being a little bigger or even longer. I mean, they're already so long with the reunion and everything else, but like even bigger and longer. So if you told me there was 6 left going into the finale and we only need to get 12 out in the next 8 episodes, that seems doable, especially if it's 12 and 8. That means 4 episodes, we need 2 people to go. 4 episodes, only 1 person has to go. That seems really doable. We saw in the next week on, there's going to be a double tribal, maybe an injury, unfortunately, which would be a big, big bummer. But I just think it'll be pretty easy, whether it's the last couple times pre-merge, it's a double tribal council, or we merge with a huge group of people, and then the first couple are 2 people are safe, 2 people are going home. We got 12, 13, 14 people voting, pure chaos. I'm definitely rooting for that. That would be unbelievable and so much fun. So it's not as crazy as it's kind of been made out to be. Yes, we're going to be seeing a lot of double eliminations, and I think that's going to be good. And I think we have plenty of time in a 90-minute episode to do 2 tribal councils and 2 possible scrambles. We'll see how many of them become convoluted. Both these tribes are going, but they're going to joined together on a beach before, or, one person's going to swap over to this one, or one person gets to watch both of them, et cetera, all that weird stuff they could do. Again, that's why I'm more so like, could we do maybe one double elim and then like a big merge would happen, something like that? Because I think the two people going home from a big group that's either split in half or something is a little bit more interesting to me. But either way, about half the next 8 episodes, at least 4 of the next 8, if not 5 of the next 8 episodes, we're going to see 2 people go home. And ultimately, when we get to the very, very end, we're going to see one person win Survivor 50. So if I was in the game at this moment, without all the knowledge I have as a viewer, I would probably see Sri, Christian, and D as the biggest threats. I think if I would have been on that beach day one, without knowing everything about how the game has gone and everything, I would have kind of viewed those 3 as real threats. And then especially if I was able to see any bit of what Christian was doing, he would rise up there, and I would see those 3 as the biggest threats, which I think makes me want to pick one of them. It also makes me obviously not want to pick one of them, because I think they're going to kind of come full circle. I think Sari has been talked about as a threat by multiple people on the beach, including D on last episode. Christian, I think, certainly will become that as people realize, like, oh, he's kind of sent everyone home so far. And then D is the last remaining winner. There was the 3 winners coming in, and Kyle, Medivac, Savannah sent home. So D is the one left with that winner, tag on her back, that, like, do we want someone to win a second time? Someone who's already won and got all the money and everything else is a big target, makes her a big threat. But I think she's made it far enough in and does seem to have good connections with her tribe and everything again, that I'm inclined to pick D. I think D is going to win, and I think she is going to become our newest 2-time Survivor champion. I think she is just a superb social game player, very similar to what we talked about with Kyle earlier, of just like, no matter what, everyone sees her as a threat. Everyone knows. Everyone watched her season and saw how, adept she was at controlling all the people she was working with, controlling the people that were working against her at times. And I think there's a good chance she just becomes the obvious, like, especially if we get to the merge situation of like, okay, let's all look around. That's number one. And everyone, without having discussion, talking, as they come together, like, who are you thinking? D? Yeah, okay, I was thinking D too. And it being pretty hard for her to last if that becomes, she's the target for multiple rounds in a row, and there's no amount of idols or immunity wins or anything that can save you at that point. But I think she's going to find a way. I think she is just that good socially. I think she's plenty good enough at the individuals to win an immunity or 2 here or there if absolutely needed. And I'm going to go with her being the winner and becoming a 2-time champion. It's obviously a total toss-up. It's impossible to predict. This game, especially a returnee season, any season's hard to predict, but a returnee season, incredibly difficult. But that's what we're going to go with. We're putting my money on D, and we'll feel good about that, even if she goes home next, which I don't think she will, because Vatu's going to lose again for sure until they're not a tribe anymore. And that's that. That was an incredibly long catch-up episode, first 4 episodes of Survivor. We covered some of the fun things, but obviously not as much as we will when we actually do each episode each week right afterwards. So again, on YouTube, it'll be live streamed. Bear with me. I don't really edit these anyways, but it'll still feel different being live. But if you want to pop in and send a comment in the moment, fantastic. Otherwise, it'll be there, obviously, afterwards, just as a standalone video to watch, and will be on all the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, all of that, to listen to right afterwards. So that's that. Until we talk again in just a couple short days on Wednesday, peace.